All right, folks, welcome to the final hour of the Steve Malzberg Show on a Friday. Sean Spicer, the communications director for the RNC, will be here. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about with him. The breaking news today on the Veterans Administration scandal, the resignation, Hillary's chapter, and much, much more. Then the Malzberg panel is back one more time. Economist and professor at the University of Maryland, Peter Marisi, also Newsmax contributor, and columnist for Breitbart.com, American thinker, C. Edmund Wright. Then Colonel Ray Frenchy LaRue, former pilot of Marine One. He flew Presidents George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama. The new book, Inside Marine One. All that, give me 5, and I promise you won't want to miss this Give Me 5. Let me give you a hint. Al Sharpton, and more on this hour of the Steve Malzberg Show.
Ready? Fire away. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City. A fusion of politics, commentary, entertainment, and sports. Steve and his team bring you the latest news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
But as he told me this morning, the VA needs new leadership to address them. He does not want to be a distraction because his priority is to fix the problem and make sure our vets are getting the care that they need. That was Rick's judgment on behalf of his fellow veterans. And I agree. We don't have time for distractions. We need to fix the problem.
All right, folks, the president earlier today reluctantly accepting the resignation of Eric Shinseki, the head of the VA. And joining us now to talk about that and more is our friend, the communications director of the RNC, as alluded to. We welcome in Sean Spicer. Hey, Sean.
Hello, Steve. How are you?
Good to talk to you again. So he reluctantly accepted the resignation instead of getting up there and saying, I made a decision and I'm making a change. Nope, this was pushed upon him, put upon him, and he was dragged kicking and screaming.
Well, here's the thing. I actually am not one of these people that I think the biggest problem right now is the easiest thing to do is to fire somebody. Barack Obama, as a candidate in 2007, talked about the fact that veterans are going to be a top priority, that the care and the time in which they got the care was going to be a major priority because of a backlog that existed. And you get a 4-star general in there that with almost 5 decades of service to this country. You cannot, if you're Eric Shinseki, be a good secretary if you're not getting the support and the resources you need from the White House itself. And so I come down on this saying that in some ways getting rid of Shinseki is a cover-up. It gives Democrats a way to say we did something about this, but frankly it doesn't do anything to help a single veteran get better care that they deserve or fulfill the promise that was made in 2007. So the irony in this is I think that Shinseki may or may not just be the easy victim of this.
Well, yeah, okay, fair enough. But this does nothing really to address the problem at all.
Exactly.
He's still sitting there saying, you know, we may need more money, but that might not be it. He still has no clue where to turn and what direction to go in with this.
So that's actually interesting that you brought that up, Steve, because the problem right now
is
that government has gotten so big and out of control that Democrats, when there's a problem, and if you think about what's been going on, just look at if we stop for a second and say, okay, Obamacare, GSA, Benghazi, everything, it's all because, you know, he heard about these things from media reports, whatever. But the bigger problem is that government has gotten so large and so out of control that we have no idea what we're doing. And the answer isn't more money. In the case of the VA in particular, it's let people go to civilian doctors, get the care in which they want and when they need it in a timely fashion, but not to say we need more money. The problem right now is bureaucracy is the problem. That's what this whole scandal is about, is people, government employees, thinking it's better to cover up wait times and the ability to get care than actually getting it done. So I actually believe that the bigger problem here isn't that we need more money, it's that we need more accountability, and that everything that happened today, as you mentioned, undermines what really needs to happen, which is there needs to be accountability, which is who knew what, when did it happen, and how do we make sure it doesn't happen again. And 2, what reforms are we going to put in place? Who's going to be, you know, do we have to fire some people? Do we have to get some people out of the way? Do we have to change things? And all we did today was give a big scapegoat to all these Democrats that said, you know, that they claim they want to support veterans, and so they get to say that they called for the resignation of someone who got fired. But as I said, the second that Eric Shinseki was let go, not one thing changed for veterans out there who deserve better. And that's the bigger problem, is that there wasn't one announcement about how we were going to immediately take up the House bill that allowed the secretary or the acting secretary now to fire people who...
Right, the accountability bill that was passed in the House.
Right. Nothing's changed. This is literally, as the old saying goes, reshuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic. It's still sinking.
Yeah,
just, and that's the bigger problem that I have with this, is that there shouldn't be a question. When somebody says, hey, there's a veteran in need, they served our country, something's wrong and they need to get in, it should be like, great, let's figure out how to make it happen, not how do we cover it up.
Yeah. All right. I couldn't agree more. Let's see where this goes and where it leads, and if in fact the Senate does take up the Accountability Act passed by the House. Although I would not hold my breath. All right. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about Benghazi and Hillary releasing part of a chapter from from her book, from her memoir, which is soon to come out, and she says. Those who exploit this tragedy over and over as a political tool minimize the sacrifice of those who served our country. She goes on to say, I will not be a part of a political slugfest on the backs of dead Americans. It is just plain wrong, and it's unworthy of our great country. Those who insist on politicizing the tragedy will have to do so without me. What does that mean?
What difference does it make? To quote Hillary Clinton. I think what that means is don't question me. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Is I'm going to give you the version of what happened, and everybody should just take that as gospel truth and don't question me. And anyone who does, I'm going to say that you're politicizing this. If you want to look for the truth, if you want to really understand whether or not that their requests were taken, whether or not we did the right thing before and after that tragedy occurred, then you are politicizing it. Anyone seeking anything other than what I tell them, that's what it's doing. It's a bunch of talking points that she's using her book to give Democrats talking points for the 2016 election to say this is how you need to handle when people ask you about Benghazi. And in doing so, the smart play for Democrats is to tell them all, anyone who questions whether or not we need to dig deeper, you should just tell them you're being political. And so I think that this is sort of her way of forecasting to all of her surrogates and allies and other readers that, anyone who tells you other than my point of view on what happened in Benghazi, you should question their motives. Well,
what does this mean, do you think, if anything, for when and if she's called before the Select Committee? Is this an indication? Of course, she wrote this, one might assume, well before there was a Select Committee and after her famous "What difference does it make" testimony, maybe not thinking she'd be called to testify again. But do you think this signals how she might react if she's called to testify again?
Yeah, actually, it's a great point, Steve. I think literally you're reading her testimony. I mean, this is what she will rewrite, and this is, as I mentioned, her talking points. If called before the Select Committee, if further asked in interviews, she will just, this is her talking points on what she is going to say and what she's going to want everyone else to say on Benghazi. So I think literally if you match this up with any future interviews where this issue comes up, you will see exactly what she writes in this book.
And yet, and we played this on this show, that Bill Clinton a couple of weeks ago was at some kind of thing, and I think Gwen Eiffel asked him, or someone asked him about Benghazi. He really actually jumped on Benghazi and said that, Secretary of State's not responsible for security historically, and 2 of the men who died were armed, and they were part of a group of 20, who protected the complex, and and Hillary had a report done which instituted changes, and so I thought that was going to be their line of defense. Like, it wasn't my job to get more security, and I did everything possible. But if you're correct, it's kind of good, going to be, I'm not going to participate in this circus. But I wonder how that's going to fly with the American people.
Well, I think it's going to depend on who you are, in the sense that I think that the loyal leftist supporters of there are going to, take the talking points and go with them, which is what they generally do. I think folks on the right will be suspect, and I think people in the middle are going to probably be willing to start to look. And I think the one thing that I think is that when you're making an argument, whether it's a lawyer making it in court or a pundit making it on TV, once you tell people don't look at the other side, and you dismiss it, I think people become immediately more skeptical because they kind of wonder, why are you not even allowing me to understand the other side of the argument?
Yeah.
And so that's where I think the danger is for them in terms of articulating this response like this, is that they're dismissing it in such a way that I think that people who actually are interested in understanding her or her her way of thinking are going to look at that and say that's a little that's not the kind of person I want leading a country.
All right, I want you to hear what State Department spokesperson Jennifer I don't know if it's Psaki or Psaki.
Psaki, yeah.
Okay, Psaki, no P. Said, and this was echoed, or either she's echoing him as she alludes to, or I don't know who said it first, but they both said it about Barack Obama and foreign policy. Get a load of this and tell me what you think.
I would argue the president doesn't give himself enough credit for what he's done around the world, and that's how the secretary feels too. We would not be engaged in comprehensive negotiations with Iran, which is where the program is stalled and is rolling back, if it were not for the role of the United States, along with the P5+1 partners, certainly. Ukraine, we've been engaged more or as much as any other country in the world.
Well, how do you react to that one? That president's doesn't give himself enough credit for all of his foreign policy successes.
So if you keep playing it, right? If you keep playing that tape, the press corps then laughs at Jen when she says that. And when you lose the press corps and you're a Democrat, you're in big trouble. But let me just read you. This is what the New York Times, another not. This is sort of like losing a family member if you're a Democrat. This is what they said, that Obama's speech, quote, did not match the hype, was largely uninspiring, lacked strategic sweep, and is unlikely to quiet his detractors on the right or the left. That's the New York Times editorial page. That's literally like your mom walking in and saying, Steve, I don't think you did a good job at work today. It's like it can't get any worse when you've lost your mom.
Yeah.
And I think that's frankly what, there wasn't the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the New York Times, editorial page after editorial page throughout the ideological spectrum said that this, that his speech at West Point was just sort of uninspiring, had nothing to it, and I think that's the problem, is that they can't even spin this well.
All right, let me. Of course, I have to ask you. News breaking just a moment.
I'm watching it now.
Yeah, and that is Jay Carney resigning. Your take on Jay Carney as White House press secretary?
Look, I don't know Jay personally, but I'll tell you, I think he's had a very tough job. I think you get in the way of having to echo, do things like you just mentioned, although in that case it was Jen Psaki. But I think when you're spinning that Obamacare is working, when you're spinning that there isn't a problem at the VA, or that, as it happened to him the other day when he was asked whether or not Secretary Shinseki still had that.
And don't forget the Benghazi memo that he said wasn't about Benghazi. Right. And Ari Fleischer called that one of his worst days ever, and he said he's had some pretty bad ones.
Well, and I think when you watch day after day the press briefing, as we do here at the RNC every day, it's just become more and more difficult to watch him stand up there and go through with this. I mean, it's just tough. I don't know if he just doesn't have the confidence of the team there. But I just think there's a point at which you got to go, look, it's just, it's almost like a relationship. It's just not working. He doesn't seem to have the confidence. The press corps mocks him. He gets into a daily battle with them. So I think at some point it was inevitable.
Yeah. All right, Sean, always great to talk to you, sir. Thank you very, very much.
Have a great weekend, Steve.
Too.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Sean Spicer, ladies and gentlemen, the communications director of the RNC. Very, very interesting. And, of course, Jay Carney stepping down is interesting as well. Lots going on today on a Friday. People hungry for the start of the summer. But that doesn't mean that there isn't news and there's not going to be news. And it will always be covered here in the way we like to cover it right here on the Steve Malzberg Show. When we come back, once again, it will be the Malzberg panel. And it'll be C. Edmund Wright, and it'll also be our friend, in addition to C. Edmund Wright. Well, you know who he is. We're going to come back with the whole panel on the Steve Malzberg Show. Don't go away.